Welcome to Whiskey Nightcaps, the channel where we do sip before sleep, and I am your host, Jason Davis, and today we are here to talk about Balcones Single Malt Rum Cask Finish. But before we get into that, if you are new here, please hit that subscribe button, and even more important, hit that notification bell, because otherwise you may not see when these videos get posted until like 2 weeks later. And by that time, hey, the whiskey I reviewed might be out of stock. All right, so Balcones quickly becoming one of my favorite lines of whiskey, favorite brands of whiskey, straight out of Texas. And I don't know, I guess it's just something about that Texas heat, you know, when they're aging these whiskeys, it just gives them so much flavor, baby. More flavor than Public Enemy, okay? Because they had Flavor Flav in the group. Get it? All right, so I own a few of their bottles, and I've been impressed with all of them thus far. Now, they're known for their corn whiskey. You know, they use a different variety, a blue corn, to make their corn whiskey, which gives it a different profile. But they also are very much interested in making American single malt whiskeys. Now, I have to stress the term American single malt because that is a legal thing. You cannot call yourself a Scotch in America. It has to be called an American single malt. Now, this one here, it ain't no punk. It's coming in at 62% ABV. And for those of you that can do math, okay, that's 124 proof. Woo! I channeled my inner Ric Flair there. Now, also worth noting again is that this is a rum cask finish. So after it was aged, and this is a non-aged statement whiskey, so we don't know. We can speculate, but we don't know how long it was aged. Once it comes to that period of maturation, they do finish it for a few months in rum cask barrel. Now, their other single malts are award-winning bottles, and so I figured that this one will be no different. So I spent the money on it. Let's see how this thing stands up on the nose. Take my little cap off, my little skull cap. As soon as I lifted that off, the smell really just jumped out into the air. Now, I don't know if you can see this. Anytime you want to see the true color of something, all you have to do is put a white background behind it. Now, I didn't have something that was blankly white, but I did have this manual here in the garage so that you can get a chance to see. Let me see if I can get up close on you. Yeah, take a look at that. Take a look at how dark this is, okay? Again, like I said, this probably comes from that Texas heat, just really speeding up the process of aging in the barrel and giving it so much barrel influence. All right, so let's see how it goes. All right, so I'm getting some of that syrupy sweetness of the rum right off the top. Loads of barrel spice, honey jumping out, smacking me in the face, vanilla, a little bit of cinnamon, orange peel, and that is a lot coming off of one whiskey. Lots of layers there, you know, and typically when I'm doing the nosing, you know, if you watch my videos, if I can't find anything there, I just leave it alone. I don't lie to you, but this one has a lot jumping out of the pot. Okay, this thing is like a hot pan of grease just popping out. All right, so let's see how it is on the palate. Woo! Woo. Okay, so oakiness right there, dominant note is that oakiness coming right onto the tongue. Spice on the finish, a little bit of sweetness. But you're definitely getting that barrel spice rolling down the back of the throat. Let's let it sit for a little while. And while we do that, let's discuss American single malts just for 1 second. Okay, so there's a difference between American single malt and Scottish single malt, mostly in the legal requirements of the mash bill. So when you buy a Scotch and it says single malt on the bottle, you know that it is 100% malted barley. There's nothing else in it. Otherwise, it has to be called a blended whiskey. Now here in the good old US of A, in order to be called an American single malt, you just need 51% malted barley, and you can mix in other things like corn and whatever, unmalted barley, whatever you want to put in there. But in order to have the term single malt placed on a bottle here, it only has to have a mash of 51%. Now, this is said on many other videos, on many other channels, but the one thing I feel like people leave out, there's a huge factor in the profile of American single malt whiskeys are the cask that the whiskey is matured in. When you go to Scotland, the single malts there are aged in ex-bourbon barrels. So these are barrels that have already housed a bourbon for a number of years, and once that has been bottled, those barrels are shipped overseas, they put their whiskey in, and they let it mature for however long, 12, 3, whatever. Here in America, the majority of these single malts are aged in, you guessed it, new oak barrels, just like bourbon, right? Now there's a young lady, let me get her name for you because I can't think of her right now. Heather Green. Okay, now Heather Green came with an analogy that directly illustrates this point we're trying to make about new cask and ex-cask or first fill cask. Think about a tea bag. You go to make tea, you put that tea in the hot water, typically you throw that tea bag away, but let's say you did not. You kept that tea bag and you attempted to make a second cup of tea. That second cup will not have the same flavor as the first one because you've already used the majority of the flavor in that first cup, and that's the same thing with used barrels. So when they're putting these single malts in new barrels, they're getting jam-packed with that oak influence. Now, another point that I found that was interesting, I wouldn't say that it has really any bearing on the flavor profile of the whiskey, but it's interesting to me. It's a rum cask finish, and the rum barrels that they use to finish the whiskey in are their own because they also distill because they also distill rum. And once that rum comes to maturation, they empty those barrels and then put their own single malt into those barrels to finish off. Now, even though American single malts are only required to have the 51%, I think it's important to note that this one is actually 100% malted barley, and for what I understand, it was imported here from Scotland. Now, I think I've done enough rambling, given this enough time. I've stalled and given this enough time to rest a little bit more. So let's go back in and see if anything has changed or if we're able to grasp anything new. Now that oak is starting to come off on the nose as well, a real sticky, viscous, molasses kind of smell, followed by the sweetness of that vanilla. So not much change there, just the introduction of the oak note. Let's go to the palate and see if there's anything there. There's a little bit of like fig there. Now, I did not add any water to this glass. This is the straight 62% ABV burning my throat, okay? Still has that very dominant oak note, which seems to be a thing with American single malts, at least for me. You know, if you see my review of Old Line, which is a single malt from a company here in Maryland, they're down here in Baltimore, you know, I get that same note with their whiskey as well, but with a little bit more tannin to it because they try to speed up the aging process with their whiskey so they can get it on the shelves faster. This has a very slow burn, long finish. You're getting that hug going down. If you're a fan of that, then you'll be a fan of this, okay? All right, so what is ye verdict of this Balcones single malt rum cask finish? I'd be silly to say that this is not a winner. You know what I mean? This thing is awesome, you know, powerful whiskey, gives you a punch of flavor. You know, you're getting the non-watered down version of it. It's not that expensive. For me, it checks all the boxes, okay? I love American Single Malt whiskeys. I know a lot of my viewers, you know, you guys are stuck on the bourbon. I'm trying to introduce you to some new things, but it checks that box off for me. So you have the single malt box, check. You have the rum cask finish box, because I love anything rum cask finish that adds that extra vanilla note to it, check. Barrel proof, check. Made by Balcones, quadruple check. All right, so I know a few of you have mentioned that, you know, you have tried a lot of the different Balcones whiskeys. You know, tell us down in the comments, you know, what is your favorite expression of Balcones? Which ones haven't you tried that you want to try? Tell us your opinions down below. Another one wrap up. Whiskey Nightcaps out.